Welcome into No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Joe Zollo. We are now half of the way through our A Look Inside, A Look Back series. Sorry, that gets me every single time. We are currently entering the spot where there were playoff teams last year, such as the Patriots, the Raiders, the Cardinals. There is currently only 3 repeat playoff teams in this situation right now. We'll talk about the Chargers, the Eagles, and the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, one of them only still being alive. The other 2 teams to round us out, the Saints and the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot to talk about. A lot of teams we did pretty well on, but more often than not, this crew was not very right about literally, spoiler alert, there's not a single thing right about the Cowboys. Not a single thing right about the Cowboys. And that is at the end of the show, and I'm very excited to talk about that. But before that, 7 whole teams plus the Cowboys to break down. Let's get into it. Welcome into No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Joe Zollo. As always, Josh, Ryan. This one's going to be this one's really going to expose some people here. Some really specifically Ryan.
This is a very anti-Ryan show. I picked up on that very quickly in the show sheet.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't get much right either of these 8 teams. So
but these 3 teams, and me and Joe were talking about this backstage. There are 3 teams we're talking about on this show that I just overhype terribly. We're starting with one, we're ending with one. Josh, you call me out on one of them every single year. So this is a show where I have a lot to own up to. And honestly, this is one where I'm probably going to take notes myself, because this show shows a lot of what I got wrong in projections, and that's what this is all about. So
I got Ryan to admit that I think was the best at this sequence of events here. Yeah. I hit on, I think, 3 pretty big sleepers. 2, I think there was a third one in here, but all around this one is definitely an all over the place kind of episode here. And obviously, to start, the Chargers will fix their playoff woes with the signing of Jeff Wilson, big glue guy, and he loves the Whopper commercial. So,
did you see the
no, he could play that tandem back with Eckler so much better than Josh Kelly.
That would be fire.
So,
to go back to the fucking Burger King commercial, because that's how we need to start the show.
Whopper.
It's chicken sandwich now. And so after our wonderful ending for the show last week, I went in and talked to my wife and Donovan. They heard me singing. Donovan was already singing it. Marlia is losing her mind. And now there's a new one for chicken sandwiches that Marlia literally wouldn't let me skip on YouTube. She wanted to hear.
No, that's the OG, the chicken.
No. They have 3 new sandwiches right now. So it's a brand new one again.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. 3 tasty options on a budget.
Oh, good God.
Maybe it is the OG then. Because like I said, it's they're sandwiches that are live right now. But anyway, long story short, that has taken over the Weisse household.
Oh, what a fantastic
Burger King.
Jingle.
Worst
Burger
fucking
King.
Food on the planet.
Maybe I'll get Burger King tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe I'll get it.
I won't.
Okay, good. Don't worry. All right. Los Angeles Chargers. I know I say this about a lot of franchises. If there is one perennial choker franchise, it has to be the Chargers. If you had to put choking, like if choking was in the dictionary and you had to put an NFL logo next to it, it has to be the Chargers. Has to be. Just
Can't
historically.
Even argue that. I'd say yeah.
I talk about the Bills being a loser franchise. They made 4 Super Bowls straight. Did they lose all of them? Yes.
Cleveland
Cowboys
would give you a run for your money there if you look at the history of the Cleveland Browns. So.
But have they choked a lot?
No, they've just sucked.
They've just sucked.
That's what I'm saying. You guys are too recent. Josh, you know better. Cleveland in the 80s to mid 90s were good and choked. So
okay. The Chargers just seem to have been their entire existence.
Yeah, you're a good point there. Yeah.
And choked every time. So,
I mean, even when you go all the way back to like Dan Fouts with the 1,000-yard wide receivers, they were still choke artists. So you're absolutely
Eric Coryell, right? That was they never did anything in that meaningful in that offense. Essentially, it's been. I mean, Phillip Rivers, LaDainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates. How do you do nothing with that team?
I mean, they've had for that franchise, they've had two of arguably the best tight ends in NFL history in Antonio Gates and Kellen Winslow Sr.
I mean, you could. That's probably they're both top 5, probably. Yeah. I mean, you got to think. Tony Gronkowski.
Tony G is number 1 without much competition yet. Kelsey will be there, but
Kelsey can't block. Kelsey will never be 1. Kelsey can't block. That is affirmative. Literally, they said it on the broadcast. If you ever see Kelsey blocking, he's lying because he can't block. They said that on the broadcast. They said if you see Kelsey blocking on a pass play, it's a lie because he can't block.
And I think that's the big difference in the history of the tight end position. Like you're
that's
seeing,
a good point. Yeah, you had to do everything.
They had to do everything back then. They don't now, and that's why you have guys like Travis Kelce that are just putting up the offensive numbers that they are because their offense knows, hey, we've got a talented guy, but we don't need him to block because we've got either a really great scheme or our offensive line doesn't need the help.
Give me Rob Gronkowski every single day of the week over that fucking schlub who cannot block. Are you kidding me?
Got a great podcast, though, so I'll give him that.
If I got to win a game, it's Kelsey all day.
That's not even a question.
Well, to be clear, if I got to win a game, it's Tony Gonzalez.
It's Tony Gonzalez.
All day.
Yeah, it's Tony Gonzalez. Back to the Chargers. Play the most fantasy upside. Josh, Mike Williams, Ryan, Isaiah Spiller. Nice. Player who's the biggest trap. Josh, Austin Eckler.
And I don't I really wanted to go back and rewatch this episode because I had him as my RB3.
The RB1, he says.
Yeah, I had him as my RB3. And I'm like, I mean, I figured there would be a slight dip in touchdowns, and there were. Like he scored 18 in 2021, scored 16 this year. So there was a small dip, sure, but
No.
I
love that we're the
he scored 18 touchdowns this year.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then I had him at 16. That's what it was.
Josh, I love that we're the opposite. That you called him a trap and projected him high, and then I'm about to be right on my trap, and I still projected the guy high.
Yeah, but your reasoning was don't take quarterbacks early.
Yeah.
I copped and I knew that, but yeah.
103 receptions.
Well, and that's the thing, and it's kind of one of those all right, where's the multiverse where Keenan Allen stays healthy all season when Mike Williams stays healthy all season? How many receptions does Austin Eckler have at that point? Because he was the leading receiver on this team.
103.
103. If Mike Williams stays healthy all season, that doesn't change. If Keenan Allen stays healthy all season,
93.
maybe 85, 90, because Keenan Allen's more the underneath kind of guy. But Herbert, there were probably 10 to 15 designed plays for the running back.
Well, there had to be. I mean, they were working with DeAndre Carter and Josh Palmer for much of the year.
They were also working with fucking Sony Michel in the backfield. So don't tell me that DeAndre Carter and Josh Palmer suck more than Sony Michel. But Josh, you had Justin Herbert Josh, you had Eckler. Ryan, you had at his ADP Justin Herbert, which is a W apparently.
Well, yeah. So Herbert's ADP was
2, right?
Yeah, it was high. Yeah. It was 2 or 3, and he finished at 12, I think.
Yeah, then that's definitely a W. For Nate, who's on the show, excuse me, one player on this team you have to leave your draft with. He didn't give you 1; he gave you 3. He was wrong about Herbert, very right about Austin Eckler. I want to say yes on Derwin James. I do. There were points in the season where it was bad, and I think he stayed healthy most of the year.
I was gonna say, as I had him in a few leagues, and I was happy to have him.
Yeah, you were happy to have. Yeah, you're happy to have Derwin James. Player most avoiding Joey Bosa and Mike Williams. Mike Williams, because it's not a contract year, and we'll talk about that in a sec. And I mean Joey Bosa, just injuries. I think I said this on our IDP show too. I didn't have Joey Bosa ranked in the top 12 for defensive ends. And I remember that was one thing I think, Ryan, you brought up. And I said, he's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
That's why he's not there. If you could guarantee me 16 games of Joey Bosa, he's a top 5 defensive end, and there's little competition there.
Yeah.
But he just can't stay healthy. If he could stay healthy like his brother, him and his brother would probably be 1 and 2 in sack leaders in the NFL.
I want to throw another thing in for Nate here. Part of the reason he said Bosa was on MFL, Bosa was linebacker only when MFL went to true position. And so if you couldn't play Bosa at DN, you did not want to play Bosa at all in IDP.
You did not want him. His favorite defensive player for IDP is Derwin James. Yeah, very much so. My biggest sleeper, I put whoever the third receiver was because at the time, no one knew if it was Palmer or Guyton.
Yeah.
Felt really good about Josh Palmer. And I said, whoever it is will get a couple deep balls per game. One normally ends up in the end zone. And when Williams gets hurt because it's not a contract year, one of them will slide into the wide receiver 2 role.
Honestly, one of them was a wide receiver 1.
One of them was a wide receiver 1, actually.
Joe just straight up crystal fucking balled.
Crystal balled it, right?
Los Angeles Chargers.
Crystal balled it, right? That's a pretty fucking good call.
Amazing.
That's why I left the description in there. I wanted you to
I forgot I even said that. So, yeah, thank you. My IDP stash, I had the wrong linebacker. Drew Tranquil should have been the guy. He had a fantastic year. Kenneth Murray was the guy I said. He was hurt. He was not as involved. Next year, if you are waiting on linebacker, no one is going to draft Drew Tranquil, so you should probably get him because he'll get you 20 points a game. He's really good.
Joe, I don't follow it as closely as you or the folks from the IDP show, but Murray has looked underwhelming to me since he's come into the league.
What wasn't
for a high pick? Yeah. I mean, he played all 17 games and only had 76 tackles as a linebacker.
And so to speak that, Drew Tranquil was the guy. He did not, he almost never missed a snap.
Yeah.
Kenneth Murray, I was about to say he's undersized. No, he's like 6'2", 240. I thought the thing was he was undersized.
And that's the thing.
He's massive.
He's massive.
Played in the Big Ten, that's the problem.
And he's not quick.
And he played for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Literally the worst defense in the conference that is known to have the shittiest defenses in college football.
Yeah,
that doesn't bode well.
For some of those guys who are enormous, it's fine as long as they're quick. And he's just looked plodding when I've had a chance to see him. Yeah.
Very, very slow. He looks like an athletic freak. But Drew, I will look up Drew Tranquil's
measurables.
Right, yeah, measurables right now. Drew is also DRUE, badass.
Yeah.
Also, white guy. Never expected. But
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I play IDP, did not know he was a white guy. Holy shit, with that name.
Drew Tranquil.
Destiny.
And you want to know what he is?
White
6'2", 234.
I say white people don't name their kids cool names like that.
Yeah, he's the same.
Josh, Joe, and Ryan.
He's the same height. Ryan, your name is literally Ryan White. So
exactly. I said they don't name their kids cool names.
Yeah. He's 6'2", 234. He's 6 pounds lighter in the same height as Kenneth Murray.
He's just quick.
So, hey, remember how we talk about Notre Dame doesn't create good position players, but they make good defensive players?
Hey.
Guess where he's from? 95 solo tackles. It was top 12 in the NFL. This man was all over the place, and he had a fantastic career year. He's awesome guy. All the best for him. I think he's going to be a fantastic guy. IDP stash next year, spoiler, is Drew Tranquil for the Chargers because no one is going to draft him. Josh, your biggest hit. You were off on Gerald Everett by 10 fantasy points and had Josh Kelly as the RB2 and off by only 1 carry. Ryan, you did well in the per game numbers for Keenan. Just didn't see him missing 6 fucking games with a minorly tweaked hamstring. Almost perfect on Everett, only off by 5 fantasy points. Both of you definitely missed on Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
And injuries derailed your wide receiver projections, Josh. And Ryan, you thought they would use the second back and it would be Isaiah Spiller, who might not even have the 7th most carries on the team
for most of the year.
Yeah, he only played 6 games.
Yeah, 18 carries. 3
tough.
3 targets.
2.3 yards per carry. I think that's my favorite.
Tough. Very, very tough.
Yeah, backup running backs are supposed to be efficient. Doesn't he watch the Monday show? What is wrong with you?
Doesn't he watch Tony Pollard?
Yeah, no shit.
Well, and you know what? It makes sense now because like everybody in the dynasty fantasy football community was so high on Spiller pre-draft, and then he slipped and like landed in LA with the Chargers, and everybody's like, oh, maybe there's hope. You know, bad draft capital, be damned, blah blah blah. And Ryan, I know you kind of bought into it. I started to buy into it the more drafts I did.
Yeah,
I think we saw this year why he slipped.
I want to give credit where it's due, but I'm not going to be able to. I am lucky enough to work for Football Guys, and I'm a part of the Football Guys group chat. And Football Guys has some of the best fantasy historians I've ever had the pleasure of working with. Someone over there is probably Jason Woods, smartest guy I've ever talked to. History is just against day 3 running backs. If a guy falls to day 3, I don't care how much you loved him in the draft. There's a reason he fell to day 3, and it's just history is against them. So.
Yep.
Wow. Tyler Algiers having fun with that one.
Yeah, I mean, but you're talking one out of how many running backs that were drafted?
I got
3, so yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be outliers, right? I mean,
precisely.
Howard was a 6th round pick, I think. So
Tom Brady,
he had a few
really,
Austin Eckler is undrafted. So, but undrafted. So then there's a study about undrafted versus 6th and 7th round. Undrafted because they get to choose their spot are actually in a better spot than 6th and 7th round guys. So,
New Orleans Saints player with the most fantasy upside. Jarvis Landry, L.
Oops.
Spoiler alert, my sleeper, Jarvis Landry.
Yeah.
L.
We all bought hard into Jarvis Landry doesn't suck.
If we expect the Jameis Winston of old to throw all the time, Landry should garner a lot of.
Well, and honestly, that's what derailed all of my projections was banking on Jameis Winston over Andy Dalton.
Yeah, and I'll talk about, well, also just health in general. I'll talk about health with Marcus May, who fucked me over as my IDP guy. But player was the biggest trap. Alvin fucking Kamara.
I wonder how right we would have been if he didn't have assault charges hanging over.
I was gonna say because like that was honestly a big reason why when I even 100%. Reworked my projections, like I built in like, you know, roughly missing 6 games, and outside of the overall number of carries, I like, wow, okay, I think I did all right. Because I projected way more carries for Mark Ingram, who obviously got hurt midway through the year, and I definitely didn't see Taysom Hill getting near as involved, but, you know.
Imagine being Alvin Kamara and getting outscored by Najee Harris.
And Joe, you actually bring up a great point with that, because I don't hear people going in on Kamara the way they're going in on Harris. And I mean, I know I'm part of the echo chamber going in on Harris, but even if you had asked me before this show, before you actually just made that statement, I would have assumed Kamara was ahead of Harris. So it's a very interesting point that we as a fantasy industry, and I'm more guilty of this, I would even say, we tend to confirmation bias hate the guys that we hated before. And I didn't like Najee Harris before, and I like Kamara, but now I forgot, like, Kamara sucked worse than Najee. Like, I need to remember that. So.
Yeah, I had him projected for 15 touchdowns. He scored 4.
3 of them in one game.
Yeah, so, that's the crazy part. He had 1 game. So.
Oh, he also had the most fumbles of any top 20 running back.
Ooh.
With 4. He also only had the second. He played 14 games this season of
Kamara
everyone. What?
Kamara played 15.
Well, Fantasy Pro says 14. So
they, for whatever reason, Fantasy Pros is not loading week 18. I was
gonna say, I want to throw out there for anybody looking at stats right now, a lot of your favorite stat websites are wrong. Josh and I discovered it. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. You've probably already heard me throw certain websites under the bus. I also learned this week that a lot of websites get their data from the website I'm mad at right now. So there's missing data all over the place. So you're going to see stat arguments like this probably quite a bit this offseason.
Okay, so regardless, in the real fantasy season, he played 14 games. which the only other people that played less games than him was James Conner. And he had the most fumbles amongst anybody in the top 20.
Dalvin Cook was tied with him. Like, let's not.
Dalvin Cook had 3 fumbles. Alvin Kamara had 4.
That's stat argument because the website I use says 4. So there you go.
Fun fact, if you actually scroll down all the way, nobody has more fumbles this season at the running back position than Alvin fucking Kamara. I'm really happy that you guys listen to this show because you avoided it. If you listened, obviously. But, I mean, the other one also, Michael Thomas. So, that one.
That one was easy.
Yeah, that one was, that one was pretty easy. But Alvin Kamara. Nate, one player on this team you have to leave your draft with, Marcus Davenport.
I love that Josh didn't write WRL because he didn't know.
It's defense. I leave that to Joe.
Yep, I was going to say because he didn't know.
So remember when the Saints traded up 14 spots in the draft and gave up an extra first-round pick to draft a defensive tackle out of the University of Texas, San Antonio? Do you remember that?
Yep.
That was fun. He had 29 tackles last year.
I was going to say, just awful.
And played in
it was such a reach,
games.
too. Like, that was a draft that was so devoid of defensive end, like edge rusher talent. And everybody knew that the Saints needed an edge rusher. And they made a play for the next best guy, even though he sucked.
And you know what's funny? We talk about contract year, guys. 2021, 4th year in the league. Team may or may not pick up his option. They may or may not re-sign him. 39 tackles, 9 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. Good for defensive lineman 15 on the year. He did that in 4 less games in 2021 than in 2022. He has less tackles, 8.5 less sacks. Oh, and he's ranked 333rd amongst defensive linemen.
Rough year. I mean, that team sucked.
Rough year. So, Alvin Kamara, player most avoiding. Dub. Favorite defensive player for IDP leagues. Cam Jordan. Another fantastic year. 9 sacks, 66 tackles, 232 points. Another good year for Cam Jordan. Just waiting for him to fall off the cliff, and he just hasn't yet. He's just been solid. Again, Jarvis Landry, L. My IDP stash, Marcus May, L. I was hoping he would come back from his 2020 season where he was absolutely electric with the Jets. He was hurt in 2021. I said, no, this is a bounce back year. Didn't happen. Tyrann Mathieu had a better year than him.
He had some early games. May did, because I had him on a league.
Yeah, but he was also, then he got hurt. He played 11 games. Yeah. Josh, the only thing you were mostly close on was Dwayne Washington, the team's RB4 in his 11 carries.
I had him with exactly 11 carries. I will take my victory lap where I can get it.
Nice. Ryan, you missed Olave by 20. Was, as always, too high on touchdowns, too low on catches. Josh, your biggest miss was everything. Ryan, your faith in Jameis Winston, no faith in Taysom Hill. Thought Michael Thomas would play. The whole team, really, I thought they would suck. Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, like banking on Jameis to be the quarterback 1 of this team
changed everything.
Threw out everything.
If you had told me, you know what? No, I'd say if you had told me that Andy Dalton was the quarterback, the issue is I would have been even lower on Olave at that point, and then I would have been even higher on Jarvis Landry. So it would have been a tragedy. So
to the Eagles, player with the most fantasy upside, Kenneth Gainwell.
For this being my favorite team, I missed so much of this.
You actually did not do well at all.
The Slim Reaper, though.
Well, with the upside downside stuff, with the projections, I was a little closer. But.
Yeah. Kenneth Gainwell decided to turn it on in week 20 in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. So
Did
good
you
for
see
him.
He gave like a quote after the game about how he had been working up to it. It's like, come on, bro. It took you 20 weeks.
Took it took him 20 weeks. But you know the only thing that matters, the Giant Killer came out.
Oh my God.
The Giant Slayer.
Every fucking bit of
11 touchdowns in 9 games against the Giants, 7 in 52 other NFL games. That is the definition of owning a team.
There's a giant fan account that said their number one priority this season is signing Boston Scott because they're tired of this shit.
He literally scores in every game he plays against you. I'd be pissed.
Yeah. I had him projected for 4 touchdowns because I said he's going to score 2.
You did. I remember 2 in each game.
I'd be pissed.
Hey, he had 3 touchdowns. I wasn't too far off.
Ryan, you had Devonta Smith as your upside. That was the guy I was on too. I was less on AJ Brown and more on Devonta Smith. Turns out it didn't fucking matter because AJ Brown was fantastic.
One bit, which
I
think I bring
which
up
was
later.
both Josh and Ryan's traps. So big L there.
Oops.
Hey, honestly, after week 1, if we stopped it there, Devonta Smith and AJ Brown would have made us look really bad at that point. Considering.
Well, and that's the thing. So, like, I remember when we did this show, my initial projections, I was a lot lower on AJ Brown, and then I readjusted my projections after we finished all of these shows, and so AJ Brown ticked up a little bit more for me, but I still would have called him a trap based on ADP because I had him, I think, in my final rankings as like wide receiver 16, and he was still going in like top 7.
Yeah. You know, Josh, I basically did the same thing, and it was not even so much about these shows. I like to give credit to people who've worked with us and people whose names I listen to. Joe Pepe really went in this offseason about preseason that AJ Brown was not the trap people thought he was. And he even did one of our shows, Duncan on Joe, defending AJ Brown. And Joe was a big reason that I moved him up my rankings. Like, he ended at one point, I was notoriously low in the football guys ranking, to the point where I was like asked to explain myself for having him as like wide receiver 25. And I think he had worked his way up to like wide receiver 15. And I want to give credit to Joe on that one, because Joe was a big reason, like listening to his argument and realizing I was going overboard. I still loved Smith. And like Joe Zollo said, it doesn't fucking matter. They both went off. But I would have been way worse on AJ Brown if not for Joe Pepe.
Yeah, the thing for me was catch percentage. He never really displayed a huge like ability to have like a 67, 68% catch percentage. And I only projected him at 60%. And I think he finished.
I had him at 60 as well, Josh. I had him at exactly 60.
And that's really what threw me off. Like if I'd had that at like 68%, then yeah, he would have been way higher in my rankings as a result.
I think something else too going into next year, AJ Brown's not a trap, but where they're going to be drafted, you probably want Devonta Smith way more than you want.
Joey, that was our whole Monday show. So
right?
Monday I talked about how eerily CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown basically had the same exact season, but CeeDee Lamb needed this season to be good because of his draft stock and everything that went on with him. But they both went in our very first mock draft, which was a way too early mock draft. They both went in the second round, and that's just ridiculous. These are not players who should be drafted in the second round of fantasy draft. So that's a really good point, Joe.
Yeah, at that point, you're talking talent-wise. I think if you were to put talent-wise, I think you could give me an argument for AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb. I think CeeDee Lamb is an absolutely just unbelievable wide receiver that just his offense can't be consistent. Oh God, who would have thought? Who would have thought Dak Prescott throws interceptions?
Save it for the end of the show, Joe.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. Hang on. AJ Brown actually had a 60.7% catch percentage, so I really wasn't that far off.
So what you're saying is we were perfect.
It was really
way to go, Joe.
It was
way to go, Josh.
Lack of targets, really. Yeah.
Proud of us.
Yeah. Way to go, Joe. You can tell me that when I get to my sleeper.
The lack of targets, and he had almost 18 yards per reception. I had him at 15.
That's absurd.
It's what these shows are all about. To go into how I do my projections, one of my notes that I carried from 2021 into 2022 was to be careful with yards per catch over 13 because just of how like uncommon it is. Fucking 18 yards per catch. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And
that's gross.
Last week, who had 18? That was shocking to me, and I don't remember who it is now.
It's gross. Michelle Mazouk was part of this show. She said Jalen Hurts is the one person you have to leave your draft with.
Way to go, Michelle.
Player most avoiding, Miles Sanders. I remember we had a disagreement on that. In 2 years, this player will blast off and become a top 5 option. Hey, he did pull a Gabe Davis.
Yeah.
Kenneth Gainwell, big game Gabe, as Tony Romo has coined Gabe Davis. Where was he on Sunday? Nobody will ever know. But Kenneth Gainwell looked great to close out the Giants in the playoffs.
And Sanders is a free agent after this year, so there's definitely still a chance.
No, there's definitely a chance. My biggest sleeper, Miles Sanders. I'm like, he's too low. He's the starting running back, and he's too low at RB 27.
Joe, I think
I didn't expect as many carries as he got.
No, God, no.
Yeah.
So what I find interesting is, Joe, you don't listen to the fantasy hype machine the way everybody else does. You're not as plugged in. You'll openly admit this, especially in the summer where you're buried in baseball. So I find it interesting where like you saw the trend that the fantasy world was turning on Miles Sanders because he fucking said, don't draft me. And you went against it. So I think that was a great call on your part. Again, these shows are about the lesson, and that's a lesson.
I think I openly admitted on the show because Michelle literally said that. She was like, didn't you hear Miles Sanders said, don't draft me? I was like, Michelle, I don't know what the hell happened yesterday, let alone what I have heard. I don't have time for any of that shit right now. And I was like, no, I'm still going to keep him here because his ADP, he outplays RB27. I believe that. I was like, he's going to outplay RB27. And he did. And then I threw the deep guy in there because I was like, okay, I don't know if Miles Sanders is a sleeper because he's a starting running back. I threw Zach Pascal in there. I love Zach Pascal. I do. I got a soft
You've been
spot
hyping
for him.
Pascal since those Colts days.
If he was a fucking wide receiver 2 on your team, you would be so happy.
Well, what's funny is,
So
Joe, because
happy.
of you, right before the AJ Brown trade, because I had my projections for the Eagles done early. I was so fucking high on Zach Pascal before AJ Brown came to town.
I firmly believe this. If you switched Josh Palmer and Zach Pascal, same exact statistics, same exact output, guaranteed. I think Zach Pascal is that good.
Yeah.
I was only 11 yards off of his season total. He had 150. I had him at 161.
Nice. Thank you for over projecting him. That's my dog. My IDP stash was Kazir White. They just said, fuck you, Kazir. We're not going to actually use
DJ Edwards did damn well this year.
Yeah,
Really
Kazir
did.
White.
Especially in coverage, too. I was actually looking at that today. And, Joe, I know how much you hate PFF grades, but he was the number 7 linebacker in coverage grade this year.
DJ Edwards.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like that one's hard to
and he finished tied for 7th in tackles in the NFL, too.
Yeah, that one's okay. How about this? Where did Fred Warner rank in that? Because of
Lower.
What?
Lower in both categories.
Yeah, okay. So
I literally had this argument with my boss via text right before we got on the show because he's a Niners fan. And he's talking about how great his linebacker core is. And I'm like, don't sleep on our guys because they're really fucking good. You guys just have names.
So PFF is lying. Fred Warner is the best coverage linebacker in the NFL. That's not even a question. He ran stride for stride with fucking CeeDee Lamb. That is the best cover linebacker in the NFL.
They had Greenlaw at 5, just in coverage.
Dre Greenlaw can't cover. What are we doing? PFF's a joke. Pro Football Focus is a fucking joke if they have Dre Greenlaw higher than Fred Warner. Idiots.
I want to give credit again. This is a good show where I learned a lot from people. I did a show with our friends over at Fantasy and Frames, and they were worried about Kazir White's role coming over from, it was the Chargers, right?
Chargers, yeah. Stick with LA.
They said his role with the Chargers was very different from what it was going to be with the Raiders. So shout out to Nate Markham and Jorge that they called that perfectly. So.
Biggest hit, Josh, you projected 532 pass attempts, 544 rush attempts. They were 536 and 544 respectively. 13 fantasy points off Hurts. That's good.
Those were splits that I was happy about. Like I said, with the rush attempts, like I had a lot more given to Scott and Gainwell. I still had them really close, and that's where they finished. But I didn't see in any scenario that Miles Sanders would compile 259 attempts. Like he always misses games. Always. And he played all 17 this year. So, I mean, outside of the touchdown spike, like hats off to him for that.
Contract year.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
It was a good year for contract year running backs.
Yeah. You had Sanders and Dallas Goedert pretty close on their receptions and yardage as well. Ryan, literally nothing I could find.
Yeah.
That's what it says. Biggest miss. Josh, you shifted way too many targets to Kenneth Gainwell. Goddard injury forced more targets to Brown and Smith. Too many rushing attempts to the Giants Slayer and Kenneth Gainwell. Ryan, too high on Quez Watkins and Kenneth Gainwell. Cost me valuable points on Sanders, Brown, and Smith. 2. Michelle Mazuk's Pittsburgh Steelers. Most upside. Dang. Josh, you just saying, you could have avoided this one. if you just, ever listen to the things I say.
No, I mean, and that's the thing. I wasn't like stupid high on Claypool. It was, it was really just a matter of, he was the guy they drafted first. Obviously, like I liked Pickens and I was in on Pickens. I didn't expect Claypool to get traded because, like it just didn't expect that. And where I had Claypool in my projections as the wide receiver 2 is pretty much right where Pickens ended up.
It's bad when you go to the worst wide receiving core in the NFL.
Oh yeah.
Don't make them better.
Targets. Yeah, it was terrible.
And don't make them better.
So bad.
Chase Claypool was Josh's upside.
But
Ryan,
at least they only paid the 33rd pick overall for him.
Yeah, so dumb.
Ryan, Mitch Trubisky.
Oops.
Biggest trap, Josh, that you missed hard on these.
And this is
here.
what's funny. He was my trap, and I was only off by 3 fantasy points on him. That's the funny part.
How high were you on tight end? Didn't Frymouth finish as the tight end 4? Like
7 or 8, was he?
Was he?
Yeah,
at one point he was a top 5 tight end. I'm looking right now. 6. Okay, he finished 6th. Well, yeah, that's because
I had him. Well, I had him at 12. I had him at tight end 12.
Well, that's because Evan Ingram was shoving his fist up the entire league the second half of the season. So
yeah, I had him at 12. But I mean, he ended up with 93 targets. I projected him at 75. I mean, that was a big difference.
He had a great year, and I think that's going to probably fly under the radar and could be that. I don't know, like middle round tight end. I don't know.
They need to let Kenny Pickett throw. And that's what Matt Canada is not calling for. Like it's these dump offs and it's destroying the offense.
Yeah. Ryan, your biggest trap was Chase Claypool. Good job. Because the player Michelle was most avoiding was Chase Claypool. So good job to you both. If there's one player on this team you have to leave your draft with, it's Deontay Johnson.
In fairness, the targets were there, the receptions were there. Like I said, Pickett wasn't throwing downfield, so the yards per reception was way low, and obviously we know about the touchdowns.
You say in fairness, I fucking hate scenarios like that because the targets were there. I felt like I had to start him every week. If I could have just benched this fucking guy, I would have been so much happier.
It's true. It's true.
Yep. In 2 years, blank will blast off and become a top 5 option in his position. George Pickens looks like he might be there. And that was my biggest sleeper as well. I said at the time, has to be by default. Najee and Deontay go high, and Chase Claypool's dog shit. Word for word what I typed. Thank you for keeping that in there, Josh.
Crystal ball stuff there.
I'm saying. Wait till we get to Ramondre Stevenson, folks. This episode's a little freaky at the sleeper position. Miles Jack had a solid year. Most of their linebacking core actually had a very good
Everybody
season.
played solid in that linebacking core.
Yeah.
And then the D tackle who's named Hayward,
Cam Hayward,
had a great season as well.
Fantastic season. Yep. Yeah, that defense overall outside of the outside corners, they all had very good seasons.
And this is another thing for people to pay attention to because IDP wise, they had great seasons. Team defense wise, they were terrible.
They were terrible.
So.
Well, because they couldn't get off the field. So they were on the field for 10, 11 plays every drive.
Yeah.
So that's 10, 11 tackles that you have to make. And they weren't the biggest turnover machines as well. Without TJ Watt, there's just no threat to the quarterback. So there's just a lot of time. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, there's only so much one man can do back there.
He had 96 tackles and 11 pass defense with 6 interceptions and a return touchdown. I mean, he held his part.
Oh, he held his part. Look at the rest of the fucking secondary.
No, I'm looking at the stats on defense. Like, Miles Jack leading the team 104 tackles, but like zeros across the board everywhere else. Like 3 tackles for loss, 3 pass defense, but nothing else. So like tackle heavy leagues, like Miles Jack was great. If you got points for anything else, I don't know that Jack really stood out, but
that's what I would have mentioned is he's not a sack guy. He's not going to force turnovers. You need to be in a tackle heavy league to draft Miles Jack. Yeah. Biggest hit, Josh, running back targets, receptions pretty close. Just expected Harris to dominate them.
Yeah, they got Jaylen Warren a lot more involved towards the tail end of the year, and that kind of balanced everything out. So
off on DJ's targets by 7. Ryan, you only missed George Pickens by 10. It was all in his receptions, had his yards and TDs right. Freiermuth off by 15.
Which is the opposite for me. It's normally the other way.
It's normally the other way. Joshua had Trubisky lasting longer as the starter. I think many people did. Way off on passing touchdowns, 91 fantasy points off on Najee Harris.
Ooh.
Yeah,
that's tough.
Big oof.
Ryan, you had the quarterback split backwards, thought Najee would improve, also made the mistake of projecting any touchdowns to Deontay Johnson. Not even too many, just any.
I didn't know I was supposed to leave that column blank in my projections.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. To my beloved New England Patriots. This is where the crystal ball gets a little weird. The Chargers was good. This one's a little weird from me. Most fantasy upside, Josh, you have Ramondre Stevenson. Ryan, you have Jacoby Myers. Dubs all across. Myers was awesome.
Good when he played, yeah.
Yeah, when he was injured at points. When he was outside of, throwing a dumbass fucking lateral, I never saw him. Like, I don't ever remember him dropping the football.
I just was happy to see him score touchdowns. Like,
facts.
That whole narrative was fun while it lasted, but he handled business this year.
Biggest trap, Josh, Damian Harris. Ryan, you also mentioned Damian Harris, but you say no trap ADP at all. Damian Harris won't repeat, but his RB28 ADP still makes him a value.
I had just written about him in an article, which is always the most dangerous time for me to have to talk about a player. So I had convinced myself he was going to be fine. And I loved Ramondre. I just was not as low on Damian, not low enough on Damian.
Well, Michelle agreed with you, said if there's one player you have to leave your draft with, it's Damian Harris. And I think I told both of you guys that you were idiots. So,
probably.
Yeah. Player most avoiding, Hunter Henry. Smart. Honestly, anyone in that passing offense not named Jacoby Myers was a great player to not draft. In 2 years, Blank will blast off and become a top 5 option in his position.
What a pick here.
Ramondre Stevenson almost did it this year.
Yeah.
She also put Pierre Strong in there, who in limited snaps did look like he will probably be the second guy behind
And
Stevenson.
I think, I don't want to speak for Michelle, but I think her reasoning was whichever one took the James White role. So Ramondre Stevenson is just a home run.
Well, right now, Ramondre's doing all of it.
Everything.
There is no James White role.
Let's be clear. The Patriots have a back. Like, there's no more.
Well, and now they've got Bill O'Brien as their offensive coordinator. So I'm very interested to kind of dive into those numbers, like what he had with the Texans, and then, when he initially was calling plays with the Patriots, and kind of how those splits work out.
And Bill O'Brien knows what to do with a big fucking running back because he's been coaching at Alabama.
I was going to say, I think now.
And then with all those rumors that the Patriots are going to be in on DeAndre Hopkins knows Bill O'Brien's system. So
wasn't O'Brien the one that was overtly racist to Hopkins, though? Like, that was the story coming out of camp.
I saw some stuff about that online today. It wasn't from O'Brien. It was more from like McNair and Easter Bay, and
Cal McNair is a massive racist.
Well, Cal McNair is a racist. It's an ugly story. I don't want to get into it on the show, so never mind. Let's just move on.
Yeah. Biggest sleeper, Ramondre Stevenson. Quote, I think he has a massive year too. And it's not in here, but I can tell you, quote, Damian Harris will lose his job to Ramondre Stevenson. Yeah. I think I said that pre-draft of 2022.
You've been high on him literally from the rip. I mean, you've hated Harris, so it played into your narrative, but you've been right. So
I don't think there was anybody higher on Ramondre Stevenson than me. I can't imagine there was, and if there was, I'd like to meet them and invite them on the show because they seem like a great person. But I don't think there was anybody that was as high as me on Ramondre Stevenson.
Now I'm gonna go see if I can find on Fantasy Pros who was the highest, but keep going.
Please go. If I told you he was gonna be a top 10 running back, I would be lying to you. But I did say Damian Harris was gonna lose his fucking job to this guy, and he did. IDP stash, Christian Barmore, injured, but
he only played 10 games. I was looking at, because you mentioned pressures, and I wanted to see kind of where he was at on that.
He was in the backfield when he was playing. Yeah. I don't know his numbers, but he was in there in most of the games I was watching.
So PFF's pressure stats, they have him at 23 total, which actually in 10 games was the highest on the Patriots team.
He was in there almost all the time,
Yeah.
and that's why I put in there, because he doesn't get a lot of sacks just because he's not fast. He's not a Judon. He's not an Uche. He doesn't get a lot of sacks. He gets so many pressures though, and that's why I mentioned in pressure-heavy leagues, that's a guy that you want. If you get points for pressures, Christian Barmore is your guy, and he's a really good run stuffer as well.
Here's where PFF grade plays into your narrative, Joe. With no minimums, Barmore had the 6th highest pass rush grade among interior defensive linemen.
Absolutely great website. I don't know anyone that would say otherwise.
They really know their shit.
They really know
their formula. Their formula is.
I love putting Joe to make go back and forth on PFF. It's fantastic.
Can you tell me real quick? Can you tell me where Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason rank again, real quick, in their running back rankings? Okay, good.
We're not doing that.
Good. Okay, just so I can yell at PFF again. I don't ever like giving them credit, but again,
don't worry, we still got a few more teams to hit.
Yeah. I'll give myself again. He was hurt, but from the pressure standpoint, I think that was a pretty solid call.
I call it an incomplete.
100%. I think it's an incomplete. 100%.
Joe, you're always so hard on yourself. So please give yourself credit.
Thank you. Guys. I fucking called this team.
That's what I'm fucking saying. You're literally. This is the show about how great you are. I don't want you to have to take a step back at all.
Guys, Josh fucked up on his Eagles. I nailed my Patriots. Nailed them.
The amount of plays, I was pretty fucking spot on. At least I was good on that part.
I mean, I feel like my team was easier to figure out, but we don't have to talk about that.
Well, I was going to say, in a way, you're right, though. I mean, they were probably better than you thought they were going to be.
No, they were a lot better than I thought they were going to be.
I meant Joe.
Oh, fine. Fair.
Well, I mean, yeah, I thought they were going to be 3-14 because, we suck.
Yeah.
But honestly, you can't it's again, we talk about Brady or Belichick, blah, blah, all the shit. Brady won a Super Bowl without Belichick. Yes, I get it. There's no fucking way any other coach in the NFL takes Cam Newton to within one game of the NFL playoffs.
Especially not that Cam Newton. Let's never forget how bad that was. So.
That Cam Newton. Cam Newton went on to start 5 games in Carolina, 0-5. The same fucking Cam Newton.
Yeah.
There's just no way. There's no way. Biggest hit. Josh, you only had 59 yards off on the Arham and Harris combo. Missed Myers by 19 fantasy points. Mac Jones with exactly 40. He had 47 rush attempts.
Yep.
Can we check to make sure they were actual rush attempts?
47 rush attempts.
Are we sure they weren't just like he started to scramble and then bitched out and slid? Like, are we sure there was not 47? I refuse to believe he rushed 47 times.
47 rush attempts for 102 yards and 1 touchdown.
You're fucking lying. You're lying. Was close on Myers. Missed him by actually 3 touchdowns was Ryan. Biggest miss. Assuming Patricia and Judge could actually call plays. See, I didn't assume that. I just knew they couldn't call plays, but I was blindly like, okay, here we go.
Actually, I'm pretty sure that when we did these projections, they still had not named an offensive player.
I was going to say, you're absolutely right.
We were literally just going off of the old McDaniel system because they were just going to keep running something similar, whoever was calling plays. Yeah. Because that was just the playbook that they had.
I love it.
That's a really good point. Because I remember I went back after and made them very inefficient because I knew it was not going to be a good offense. So
big miss on the tight ends for you, Josh. You said Ryan, the RB split was higher than most on Stevenson, but not nearly high enough. Also thought the tight ends might not suck. Well,
yeah, they were bad.
One can wish. Yeah. The Las Vegas Raiders. Player with the most fantasy upside. Josh, I'm happy you bounced back here because you were struggling. Josh Jacobs, big W. That was a big one. Ryan, Derek Carr was your upside. Psych.
Big
benched for the Jarrett Stidham. Players the biggest trap. Josh at ADP. Darren Waller, W. Ryan, Devontae Adams.
That's on lines with my Austin Eckler call. It's like I ranked him high still, and I said he was a fade. Like, really?
Okay. You know the dumb shit about this?
That's a really good point. Let me see where I had him ranked. Go ahead, Joe.
Do you know the dumbest thing is that Devontae Adams had 95 receptions.
You know what's worse? He was my fucking wide receiver 3, and I called him a trap.
And Ryan, you know where he
the
finished?
same thing that I was saying with Eckler. I had him as my
It's
RB3.
literally, it's the exact same situation.
Devontae Adams finished wide receiver 3.
And even better, we're going to get to my hit on Devontae Adams later on. It's where I was actually right.
100 receptions.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, I'm looking at Fantasy Pros for the fantasy season. Yeah. He had 95 receptions during the fantasy season.
Oh, I see. So they're not counting 18.
Justin Jefferson had 124 receptions.
Yeah.
Devontae, so he had 29 more receptions than Devontae Adams.
Through 17.
Through 16 games. Through the 16 games there. He only had 38 more fantasy points.
Yeah.
Devontae Adams had a ridiculous year for not catching a lot of footballs.
Adams was unreal.
And he finished second in targets, Adams did.
171 through the 16 that I'm looking at. It's absurd. It's fucking
I think
absurd.
Adams put a lot of doubters to bed, and I don't know that there were a lot of Adams doubters, but I think a lot of people wondered how tied to Aaron Rodgers Devontae Adams' success was, and it very clearly wasn't. And Adams
His catch percentage was, though.
Well, no shit.
Good Lord.
Oh, yeah.
Adams is such an interesting case study because he did come in and was stacked behind very good wide receivers in Green Bay and was victim to this narrative of Aaron Rodgers not trusting young wide receivers, but he worked his way up that system. Devontae Adams literally became the best wide receiver in the NFL, and that's just not something you see very often.
14 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Gross. Absolute. The 3 more than any wide receiver this season. Disgusting the year he had. Questions for Nate. One player in the team you have to leave a draft with, Derek Carr. L.
It was
Player
Nate Hamilton, by the way.
Yeah, say we
Nate
had
Hamilton,
back-to-back
yes.
Nates.
We had Nate Cheatham early in the
Yes. Player most avoiding, Darren Waller. W. If you had to gamble on this player being the best fantasy asset, God.
Ouch.
Nate, I wish you were right.
This was music to your ears when we did this show.
Hunter Renfrow. Injuries. Again, I've said this before. You just imagine a white slot receiver in a Josh McDaniels offense where he has had literally 2 of the best slot receivers of all time, Wes Welker and Julian Edelman. How do you not use this guy?
And the weird part is he only averaged 5 targets a game. Like, even when he they didn't target him.
And this was a red flag for past to predict future because there was no RB committee. There was no slot wide receiver, white slot wide receiver usage. There was barely tight end usage. Like, it was such an interesting, we took the good Patriots teams and put them into Raiders uniforms.
I know I did.
We looked stupid.
That's literally how I projected it. Yep. I had this offense projected, most plays, most production, whole 9.
Yep.
Yeah, I think one of those things outside of the Randy Moss years, one of those things those New England Patriots teams never had was a dominant outside wide receiver.
Yeah.
Their offense ran through Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez at the time, and Julian Edelman, Wes Welker. They did not have a dominant outside threat because you didn't fucking need one when you had Rob Gronkowski out there. So, and even those teams, they didn't really have a dominant running back for the most part.
No, they didn't. Not at all. I mean, James White was the only running back who gave
and
shit about.
It got to a point where it was even with Josh Jacobs, and again, I don't think anybody would have predicted 340 carries.
No,
no.
That's just
in a Josh McDaniels offense. Hell no.
Well, not even just in a Josh McDaniels offense. I'm just saying, as for Josh Jacobs as a running back. Period.
There are only 2 running backs in the NFL I give that many carries: Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like Jacobs could do it, which obviously we saw that he can, but it's not something that is on the top of your mind because we've seen good running backs come through. Corey Dillon was a good running back way back in the day. I know I'm thinking of some other. Even
LeGarrette Blount. Yep,
LeGarrette Blount, another big-bodied running back that can handle a lot of carries.
Or Ramondre's next in line.
You know, they've had some of those guys, but they've just refused to utilize them that way. And I feel like 100%. With Jacobs, because we've seen the capability as a pass catcher, that we didn't stop to think like, you know what? Why aren't we giving this guy 400 touches this year? Because he can fucking do it. If they want to do it.
If I told you before the season, Josh Jacobs will lead the league in rushing attempts and rushing yards, you would have laughed someone off of your show if they told you that. And
I really wish I would have known like the player props, like the odds of that happening in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, that's some good money there.
And even when it comes to receptions as well, he didn't have a single touchdown through the air. He just had all of his
4 years touchdowns. In the NFL, 0 receiving touchdowns.
Yep. Yeah, and I think we talked about, you know, who would potentially benefit from like the James White role. I don't think any of us said Josh Jacobs. We said, you know, he might get catches here and there. But, you know, we talk about that dump off guy, that Josh Jacobs, or the James White. It was fucking Josh Jacobs. Yep. That's who it was. So moving on there. My biggest sleeper, Foster Moreau. There wasn't really anybody that I thought was low enough. Yeah, still asleep.
To be fair, Mac Hollins was really the right answer here.
100% Mac Hollins is right, but no one in their right fucking mind knew who Mac Hollins was.
So and here's what's interesting. And so I remember I did actually end up adding Mac Hollins to my projections. But I remember like when they started like cutting guys, just like deleting people off of my thing and not adding anybody until like the 25th fucking hour, where I'm like, who is the third wide receiver? I didn't know who the fuck Mac Hollins was. I put his name in there. I probably didn't even know.
He's a former Eagle. I know who he is.
Oh, there you go. See,
I knew the name Mac Hollins, but
I'm going to be perfectly honest.
If you told me he would have had 90 targets this year, I would have.
Yeah.
Hell no.
I would have said somebody has to get hurt.
He's not that good of a receiver when going into the season. Like, there's no way.
He's a special teams guy. Like,
what's hilarious.
He's a great special teams guy.
So for behind the scenes for everybody here, how I do my projections is I'll do named players who matter, and then I have a column that just says other wide receivers, people I don't feel like giving projections to, blah blah blah. I had Mac Hollins at 45 targets and other wide receivers at 40. If I had just slid those to Mac fucking Hollins, I'd have looked really smart.
Looked really good.
They really did. They did a really good job of funneling this offense just to their playmakers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did.
They really did.
Yep. For IDP stash, I said Chandler Jones. I mean, hey, if you
he had a
played
really
him,
down year though.
Yeah, well, he's 32. He's older. Yeah. I mean, if you play him in week 13 against the Chargers, he had 3 sacks and 6 tackles and 45 fantasy points. So if you picked that week, congratulations.
Yeah,
he actually had a good
4.5 though on the year.
Shut up. If you pick those 3 weeks though, Chargers, Rams, Patriots. Let's not talk about the Patriots game. He pretty much had like 60% of his points in those 3 weeks.
I was going to say, didn't they sign when they traded for him? Didn't they sign him to a pretty hefty extension to play opposite Max Crosby?
Yeah, and for the record, it worked out for Max Crosby. So
yeah, it did. Holy shit, it did. Not only did he lead the team in sacks, he led the team in tackles from the defensive end position.
Yeah, because this motherfucker's a freaking nature.
First half of this season, he's what TJ Watt was in IDP. So
I have no idea if I said it, but I know at one point I had Max Crosby as the IDP guy on this show when we were going through the Look Inside series. He does not need Chandler Jones across from him. He doesn't command the same attention as he once did. Max Crosby could be doubled on every play. That man is a ferocious animal. He does not care.
I still can't get over John Gruden and Mayock selecting Cleveland Farrell at 4 overall in that draft that they got Max Crosby in. Like, outside of the fact that they stole Crosby in the middle rounds, fantastic. But they passed up some elite defensive ends. For him,
didn't they?
No, they were at 4.
Oh.
Hey,
no, they were at
talking
4. They passed up Josh Allen for him. It baffles me.
Could you imagine Josh Allen and Max Crosby on the same team right now?
Jesus. Holy fuck.
How do you block that question?
No, you don't.
For the audience? You just don't. You don't block that, right? You can't even double anybody.
No.
You don't block it. Okay, biggest hit. Josh missed Adams by 21 targets, 1 touchdown, 8 fantasy points. I assume you were low on his targets, right? There's no way you.
Yeah, I had him at
projected that.
154, and he came in at 159. Excuse me, and he came in at 180. Like I still had him high, but yeah, it was the catch percentage that killed me. I had him at a 71% catch percentage.
I was just gonna say
there's 55%.
There's no way you projected him at 201 targets. I was like, there's no way that happened.
Yeah, no. But I think I had him at 12, little over 12 yards per reception. He was at 15.2.
Ryan, while you called him a trap, you did project a 100 catch season from Devontae Adams. Only missed Foster Moreau by 1 fantasy point. Josh, thinking this offense would be good. Yeah. Love Jacobs' potential, but didn't think he'd have all the carries. This is the biggest misses. Fell for the Abdullah camp hype. Garbage. Injuries derailed Renfro, Waller, Ryan, just about everything. This seems like a common theme for you on this show.
Bad show.
Bad show. Speaking of bad show, we're just going to continue this with 2 of Ryan's favorite teams.
Oh.
Arizona Cardinals. Play the most fantasy upside. Josh, Keontae Ingram.
Big miss.
Sorry about that one. I think I pumped up that one a little bit.
I sold myself on it though. His reception numbers in college were fucking elite, and I thought that he would have that opportunity to take over for Eno, and he really did. He had that potential, especially after they cut Eno, and I thought he'd be more involved. But he had 5 targets on the year.
Yep.
I think they're gonna. Well, again, Cliff Kingsbury, fucking dingbat. I think the coach coming in hopefully is going to realize Keontae's actually really fucking good at football, and they will use him this year. Ryan, you have James Conner. Was it really an upside when he was drafted at RB19 and finished at RB19? No, that would be.
I gave myself the L on that one.
Yeah, L. Players the biggest trap. Josh, DeAndre Hopkins. No.
Honestly though, my projections on him were not that far off, but I will take the L because again, he was wide receiver 10 in points per game. So
and also if you throw the football within the same country that he's in, he's going to catch it because it's absurd. He just does football.
Very good.
Very, very good. Ryan, Zach Ertz finished tight end 6 in points per game. You say it's a W because nobody was happy they had him?
Tight end 6 is just a guy, bro.
Especially when you miss half the season.
I mean, you're not wrong. It is just a guy. Tight end 6 is just a guy. Well, I did joke that if Evan Ingram caught, 1 less touchdown, he would have been tight end 5 to tight end 32. Exactly. Even though that wasn't the case, that was the cutoff. But tight end 6 was a 20-point drop. So, yeah, he is just another guy. For Nate, there was one player on the team you have to leave your draft with, James Conner. I mean,
it really was. He was the most consistent player all year. That's why.
And ended right where people thought. Player most avoiding, DeAndre Hopkins. Tough one. You had to gamble on a player. Hollywood Brown. I don't
think great at the beginning part of the year.
Yeah, I don't think I was on this show because if I was, I would have laughed in his face that he put Hollywood Brown.
Oh, you're right. It was just the 3 of us.
Yeah, the biggest sleeper. Dang, I had to go for it 2 years in a row because I love AJ Green and I got it right last year. I'm like, hell yeah, it's gonna happen again.
Yeah.
Nope. We're talking about a guy that's washed. Julio Jones can still catch his hamstrings, just fucking toast. AJ Green has lost his catching ability. He can't catch anymore.
Over.
And it's sad because I think this is what people are going to remember him as. Just later in his career was injured. AJ Green was a top 5 receiver.
See, it's funny you say that.
His generation, probably.
I say that it's funny you say that because I know Julio was fucking great, but he is killing that image for me right now. Like I feel like he needs to hang him up too. So.
Julio of the 2010s, you're looking at Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, AJ Green.
AJ Green, yeah.
You throw Larry Fitzgerald in there.
AJ Green is to the 2010s what Andre Johnson was to the 2000s.
100%.
AJ, because in the 2010s, Andre Johnson just started again, older, injuries, all that stuff.
Oh, same thing like Reggie Wayne too. Like he had a couple late stints, like Patriots, and like immediately retired. And bounced around. But.
I just want everyone to remember AJ Green was a fucking.
He was a boss.
Dog was unreal, and now you're just seeing the reincarnation in T Higgins. So, But the real answer was Greg Dortch, apparently.
Yeah,
So
shit.
he was wide receiver 88, going around guys like Antonio Brown and Will Fuller who aren't even employed, was what I said. So, I mean, technically he finished higher than Antonio Brown and Will Fuller.
He was better than both of those guys.
He was better than both of those guys. Now, don't ask me how many games either of those guys played this season, because that's irrelevant. But Dice Dealer, hello, happy to see you again.
Yeah.
I live in North Dakota, so I can agree on the cold weather. I understand, and I feel you. My IDP stash was Marcus Golden. I didn't really hear a lot from him this year. I said sack heavy leagues. This is the only leagues that Marcus Golden is allowed to be drafted in. So sorry. I mean, that was that. I didn't really love anybody in this defense. I would have said Isaiah Simmons, but I've said for the previous 2 seasons that I can't fucking read Cliff Kingsbury's mind, and neither can Cliff Kingsbury. But Isaiah Simmons finally learned to use him. So biggest hit, Josh only had 3 total plays off. Connor RB20. You are 8.3 fantasy points too high on D-Hop. 4 targets off on the tight end group. Ryan very close on Connor in touches and yards, just not TDs. Biggest miss, Josh, assuming the wide receivers would gain more than 10 yards per reception. Ryan, you overprojected Kyler again. Led to overprojecting the offense. Too much faith in Rondale Moore. Blame Kelly. And that led to underprojecting D-Hop.
Yeah, because I give the good and the bad for everybody. R. Kelly Singh was very high on Rondale Moore, and I was probably high on Rondale Moore and then took him far too high after editing one of her articles. That's one of the dangers of being an editor. So.
I mean, in fairness, though, like the slot position did well for this team.
Oh, yeah.
If Rondale plays the whole year, I think it's a hit, but
yeah.
You know.
One thing from Dice Dealer. Standard League, he pests us about all year. Got Bills Bengals the finals, played nice, and offered a chop. I imagine he just split the pot, right? Was what that means. Yeah, split the fucking pot. Just split it. Like anyone who was bitching about it, shove it up your ass. Like
in 8 months, nobody's talking about this shit anymore. So yeah. It sucks, but you did the right thing.
But like in big money leagues, $1,000 pot. Take your $500 and shut up.
Yeah, I had a league like that. And was in the finals, got Mike Evans and had T. Higgins and Gabe Davis. And so they were like, well, Ryan, so they originally just took it away from me. And I wasn't even going to bitch about it. I'm like, yeah, I lost. They came back like 3 days later and like felt bad for me. They're like, well, what if they make up the game? And I go, give me the L. And they're like, okay, well, this makes this much easier. I'm like, it's not that big a fucking deal. So.
One dude, I said one dude in my dad's league, he had Tyler Bass and Gabe Davis, and the other guy had Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, and he was bitching because he was up 10 points. He's like, oh, I was up. I should have won. I'm like, no, motherfucker, you would have gotten pounded.
Yeah.
You would have lost that game. So, yeah, stupid.
Yeah, and it's obviously not apples to apples, but we saw a lot of that this past Sunday.
Yeah. So. All right, friends, we're going to end this show on a really high note.
Not for me.
The Dallas Cowboys. Spoiler alert, the only hit is Micah Parsons, which was a freebie at that point.
Yeah, no shit.
Every name I am about to mention to you was an L. God, let us begin. Most fantasy upside. Josh, Ezekiel Elliott. He did finish above ADP, but it was not Tony Pollard. Ryan, Dalton Schultz, who apparently can't figure out how to drag his fucking right foot to keep it in bounds.
Or move forward to stop a clock when you need it to be stopped.
Yep.
So.
Biggest trap. Tony Pollard. Top 10 running back. Tony
What dummy
Pollard.
would have said that? You're dumb,
God.
Josh.
Josh and Ryan. Questions for Nate, because Nate's a Cowboys fan, right?
Yeah.
One player you have to leave your draft with. Zeke. L.
Oops.
Player most avoiding. CeeDee Lamb. L.
Oh, God.
If you had to gamble on this player being the best fantasy asset, Michael Gallup.
Oof.
L. Biggest sleeper. James Washington. He got cut before he even played a fucking game. L.
Oh my god.
IDP stash, Micah Parsons, dub. Haha, losers.
Boom. You did it, Joe.
I fucking did it, guys. I did it. I carried this show. Now, I don't even want to go through the hits and misses because there's no fucking point. There's no way any other team that we projected was worse than this team. There's no way.
Oh yeah, no.
There's
Ryan and I we're notoriously high on the Cowboys offense.
Yeah, Josh yells at me every year, especially as an Eagles fan. There's one player, and we talked about this. I don't remember. It's been a long show if I said it in the show or the pregame. Rookies got to us this year, but my fucking God, Jalen Tolbert was supposed to be the truth. There was camp hype. There was decent draft capital. There was need. And he did nothing. If I remember correctly,
3 targets all year.
He was a healthy scratch most of the season. Like, what?
He was active 8 games.
In there.
8 games.
Well, let's talk about the highs for this team that we got right. Josh, you're only off on 3 targets for Michael Gallup. You know,
considering the ACL comeback and everything, and other people were higher on him, I'll take that as a win.
You know, when you're leading the conversation, starting off saying you were only off by 3 targets.
Dude,
for
victory
Michael
lap
Gallup.
getting Dwayne Washington right. Like, chill.
No, what I'm
that
saying
was the best
is,
one. I thought I was going to be that with Foster and Moreau, but you outdid me with Dwayne Washington.
What I'm saying is, when you have to lead with that for those 2 teams, you know you just fucking had a terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Only off on 3 fantasy points off of the Pollard Zeke duo. You had Lamb at wide receiver 10. He finished at 5. Ryan, bear with me. I was almost perfect on the running back touch splits and fantasy points. Just had the names in the wrong order.
That was the same thing for me.
Okay. I mean,
basically, we had Zeke at like 240 plus and Pollard at 180 plus, and it was the opposite.
Yeah.
That's really what it was. Yeah.
I mean, that's like saying, you know,
I will say
I came in last at the Daytona 500, but if you flipped it, I came in
first. The point
is
when you do these projections, you're projecting, you know, the RB1 to do this, the RB2 to do that, and that's what we're looking at, right? Like, we're looking at, all right, we did the projections were right. It was just the wrong player in those projections.
Oh yeah.
I will say, I caught shit for being as high as I was, not on this show, for as high as I was on CD Lamb. Had to defend my ranking on CD Lamb on Football Guys.
Love CD Lamb.
Yeah.
Love it. Biggest miss, Josh, will the Twitter hype get to you on Tolbert? Not high enough on Pollard. Over projected pass offense by 1,000 yards. Ryan, you're way too high on Dak and Schultz, even factoring in their injuries. Over project this offense every year. Thought Gallup would bounce back and thought Jalen Tolbert would play the Noah Brown role. Little did you know, Noah Brown is great value CD Lamb.
Yeah.
And Jalen Tolbert is
trash.
What is worse than great value? Anybody?
Bad value.
The Hungry Howie's pizza. That's what it can be. I've never had Hungry Howie's because it just looks like cardboard. So
I had Hungry Howie's.
They have a dessert like chocolate pizza that they do that is, oh my god, it's so good.
Wow.
Gross.
So good. Oh my god, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I'm glad you like it.
I'm a pizza snob now that I'm in New York. I don't eat chain pizza at all.
Right?
I don't blame you. I would be too if I lived in New York.
Hey, Northeast, best pizza. Boston specifically, but you know. Okay, stop putting fucking Cheese Whiz on your main fucking thing that you make up there in Philly. Calm down, okay?
You say that like I live in Philly.
Yeah, you live in Philly. Yeah, you bitch. You bitch. I don't know.
I literally was like, I'm so confused.
I always forget. Philadelphia Eagles, Yankees fan. Very fucking confusing who he likes. It's confusing. Okay?
I mean, I make it pretty obvious. I wear the hats literally every show.
Yes, but then like you're a Yankees fan, you're like, oh, you identify with New York, but you hate the Giants. It gets confusing. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We spinning this fucking wheel again, or we not?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Spin it.
Yeah, let's do it. I narrowed this down a little bit. So right now, this is all of our active subscribers this year.
I love this.
So since I heard from nobody when we spun it last week for the 500.
You didn't hear from Yeet.
Yeah. No, it did not.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hear from this person. Let's get it.
God, I hope so.
We hope so.
Oh, it is.
Daryl Dennis.
There you go. All right,
All right.
Daryl.
Daryl, if we don't hear from you in a week, we will respin.
That's right.
But
we can do this every fucking week, people.
yeah.
I'm trying to give away memorabilia here. And this wheel will keep getting smaller and smaller if I don't hear from people. So
and you have your pick of the litter, my friend. Okay. Reminder, Manscaped. Shave your balls. Make them look pretty.
And just this week, I think, shave your face. They just put a new razor out.
I did notice that. Yeah.
Yep. So,
there's a new commercial with John Daly and his son about it. See on YouTube. So yeah, they now have it for your face molecules.
Don't use your nut shavers on your face anymore.
Use your Manscaped.
Never do anyway.
Use your Manscaped razor on your face and your Manscaped razor on your nuts.
Yeah. You don't want beard crabs.
What?
I got nothing. I got nothing.
That was in the script that Manscaped sent us. Don't get beard crabs. Use code CLUBFANTASY for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Beard crabs. What the fuck is wrong with you?
I'm literally crying right now.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Fucking hour and 15-minute show.
Oh my god, would you look at that?
Weird at the end.
Oh my God.
Things to mention about the product. Water is
I'm
water
helping
resistant.
them. I'm helping them write their beard.
No, what it's a lid. This is what they sent us. I'm reading it right now. Water resistant, soft bristle, prevents beard crabs. all these. It's weird that you mentioned that specifically because that's actually what they say on the list of like, hey, here's some good talking points for the product. Number one being beard crabs.
God. Fucking Ryan, Jesus Christ.
Don't be surprised, folks, when you never hear us have another sponsor.
Yeah, because we compare them to STDs. Yeah, that's smart.
We don't compare them.
No, we fucking.
No, whatever the next sentence you were about to say was too far. We've already jumped off that.
For Josh, Ryan, me, Manscaped, and the beard crabs you'll avoid. You can follow Club Fantasy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL is clubfantasyffl.com. Always remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy. We will see you next week where we will officially wrap up our Look Inside, a Look Back series with picks 24 through, or 25 through 32 in last year's NFL draft. We will see you